ACP, Activist Community Podcast Network, reports on issues and concerns affecting local and global communities. If you'd like to talk about current issues in Albuquerque or New Mexico, or if you represent an activist group and want to further your cause or promote your group's events, email or call Tom Den at tnldent4@msn.com or call 505-450-1268. We promote progressive grassroots efforts to lift all people and communities to a place of equality, respect, compassion, and care.
Good afternoon. This is Tom Dent, your host with Activist Community Podcast. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock on March 12th, and we're broadcasting from my house and from my engineer Lloyd's apartment. So this is actually a remote broadcast, and our uninvited guest on the podcast today goes by the name of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. You guys might, you might have heard of this. It's been on all the news. People have been talking about it all over the place. It's crazy. But apparently, this is a worldwide pandemic that we should be very aware of, but we shouldn't freak out. That's the point. Don't freak out. They probably want us to, if you think about it from an economic and political sense. And in other senses, they want you to freak out about this. So don't freak out about this. So we actually broadcast from Albuquerque, New Mexico, from anybody out of state listening to this. And for a very long time, it seemed like we were this magical place that never got touched by the coronavirus. And there were a lot of theories as to why that was happening. One of us was that coronavirus didn't know New Mexico was a state. My theory was that our radiation levels were so high that we burned it off. There were other theories and stuff like that. There were other jokes going around. And a lot of people said, like, oh, we're so poor and disorganized that we don't know how to track this if we had this, and we can't report this right, and all this stuff. Eventually, every state right around New Mexico, except for New Mexico, was diagnosed or reported active cases of the coronavirus. And yesterday, one was at Lloyd about 11 o'clock or so. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham came on and announced that there was at least 3 confirmed cases of coronavirus in New Mexico. That number has now gone up to 4. The 3 cases apparently were a couple from Socorro that had just come back from Egypt. There was a person in Bernalillo County who just came back from New York who reported into an outpatient UNM hospital clinic. And according to my friends in Santa Fe and my activist friend Tangerine Bowen, there was a guy up in Santa Fe that tested positive for it and apparently was running all over town and talking to everybody and getting his fingers and his dirty butt all over the place. The reason I'm calling in remote from my house is because, my wife is exposed to this enough. She's been going crazy at the hospital for the last 2 days, getting warnings and preparations for all this. She is the director of kidney transplant at UNM hospitals, and I'm trying to keep everything as sterilized and away from the public as I can on my end, but she's right there, and she's very brave, and they know how to take all these precautions. Apparently, we don't have enough kits to test for the coronavirus, but that seems to be the case anywhere. In other countries and other cities, apparently they've done a very good job about this, but apparently, and we'll get into this later, politicians, things on the federal level, cutbacks, and the competency of the person in the White House has kind of hamstrung us or limited us in getting as many people as possible tested at once. I'm looking over my emails. Here's something locally that we can talk about. As you may know, I'm the vice chair of the Southeast Area Community Policing Council. It looks like our meeting this month, and the meeting for every community policing council in Albuquerque has been canceled. As we all sit back, wait, try to be careful, try to wash our hands, not touch our face, spit in people's general direction, cough into our elbow, everything we can do, put on a full body condom, whatever it takes.
Sorry, that was funny.
No, I stole that from somebody on the Stephanie Miller show yesterday. I think it's Jen, her gay co-host, but she does the sexy liberal podcast, sexy liberal tour. And apparently that tour has to be canceled. The NBA has canceled the rest of its season.
No, they're going to play. They're going to play one more game tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
They're playing
That's
tonight.
Interesting.
That's the last thing I heard. After tonight, they're done.
Well, apparently they decided to end the season after a player from the Utah Jazz tested positive. And speaking of sports, I'm doing an impersonation that most of you are so young that you don't know who the hell Howard Cosell is, but in Italy they just shut down their soccer season and stuff like that because of a teammate that played with whoever the famous guy is, Ronaldo or whatever like that, came down with that. And speaking of Italy, it's a absolute mess over there. I guess the prime minister is...
Before you get too far off the sports, the thing I heard first, now they're canceling the games. They're not even playing them. But before they were going to play them to empty stadiums, which I thought was very strange. But somehow people decided that's just not going to fly. That's going to really bum people out to see that on TV. Nobody's going to watch it.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about gathering in public places, you probably said that all the NMDOH and all the New Mexico sports tournaments and championships have been pretty much canceled. Did they totally scrap the national track and field competition at the convention center?
I don't know. That's another one where they talked about they were going to do it to an empty house, and I don't understand. Yeah. I don't know. Things are changing rapidly.
Well, I know they decided to cancel the Gathering of Nations powwow at Tingley Coliseum, and
it's postponed.
Yeah, it's postponed. Well, everything's postponed for at least 2 weeks or 2 months or something like that right now. Apparently, they got kind of a rough reaction back from the organizers of the Gathering of Nations powwow, and caused a little bit of controversy. But it's kind of like we don't have time to squabble about this stuff. It doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. If somebody gives go ahead to eliminate crowded places, then we probably should do it. It's probably a really good idea.
Well, there's a very good reason for doing that, and why it's important that everyone try to cooperate for the next few weeks in terms of not gathering. In the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, they put out a pretty succinct statement where they asked the parishioners not to meet in any numbers. That people, and the reason behind that is to try to flatten the curve of contagions, more people getting sick. And really the best way to do that is to just have very little social contact.
Yeah, well, in the governor's announcement yesterday, and I'm sure the mayor's announcement, his press conference 11 that I didn't see or whatever, like that she is definitely encouraging most assemblies and gatherings of people in public places to be postponed or people not to go to. One thing, you're talking about the Archdiocese, one thing that I reacted strongly to on Facebook yesterday, and I guess it had to do with when she was announcing these public places, she happened to announce churches first. This apparently got a reaction from one of the leading pastors in Albuquerque. As reported on Channel 13 news website yesterday, that meanwhile, one of Albuquerque's largest churches is telling the governor to stay in her lane. In a statement, Steve Smotherman, pastor of Lake...
that phrase,
I know.
Stay in your lane.
Well, if you're a local activist here, you know all about Steve Smotherman, and he's not the most welcome person in this community. But anyway, the pastor of Legacy Church asked the governor, how could you tell people to live out their faith, and that this church would have its services as usual, saying that the governor should reconsider her quote as dangerous and godless advice.
Who said that?
Oh my!
Steve Stucker, or the Archdiocese?
No, not Steve Stucker. That was Steve Smotherman, the pastor of Legacy Church.
Oh, Smotherman.
Yeah, the church where the elders have determined the sheriff of Bernalillo County 5 out of the last 6 elections, and were busted by 2 different TV stations in 2 different elections from having sample ballots in their pews right next to the Bible with the candidates of their choice highlighted there. And he also teaches gun safety to youth groups and major gun nut. It's rumored that many law enforcement personnel are members of this church simply because of the fact that they've offered the lowest prices of child care, specifically to law enforcement officials in the state for the last 22 years. And it's also been rumored that certain national policies and different fusion groups have met at that church in the past. But anyway, we'll keep going. It was funny. I guess everybody's on edge. Everybody's an activist right now because this damn uninvited active agent coronavirus has spurred everybody to take all sorts of actions. I mean, you guys listening to this are thinking about your own thing right now, thinking about your own actions, thinking where you're going to go, what are you going to do. These poor bastards that have to work in retail behind cash registers and in fast food joints that have to handle our diseased credit cards and debit cards and money and all that. I guess what in China in different towns they burn the currency. Is that right?
Yeah, they've tried to sterilize it, or in some cases they've just disposed of it, and then they'll just print more like they do. Things are fast moving at this time, and we now have a KOB TV news reporting that New Mexico has announced its 5th positive case of COVID-19. All the more, yeah, all the more reason to limit your social contact. That way we can flatten out the contagion of the disease. If you look at the numbers in China, I mean, it started out that they had none, then they had 5, then they had 1,000, then they had 10,000, then they had 100,000, and then it just shot up exponentially. And after the exponential shoot up, it went back down. And it's slowly tapering off, and that's what'll happen here. And we can make it happen sooner by limiting our social contact and not having the disease spread.
It sounds like the curve, or the bell curve with the aftermath or whatever, where they're saying isolation precautions, and then the number of cases go down, the number of reported cases go down, all this stuff. I saw that in Colorado and Washington, they even have roadside stands set up for testing. And here locally, I guess what I saw last night. The Tri-Corps is telling everybody to call a specific number or call in, and whatever you do, don't show up in our parking lot in droves, or overload the hospitals, please, people. I mean, like, Lloyd, I personally talked about this for a while, that hospitals are like hotbeds for frickin' diseases. And what is your saying about your normal saying about hospitals, Lloyd?
Hospitals are where people go to die.
Yeah, well,
and that's a phrase that was passed on to me by someone, a grizzled veteran of the healthcare industry. He'd worked in hospitals for better than 40 years in all kinds of capacities, and that was his take on it, that hospitals are where people go to die. But actually, in New Mexico, to note that, I mean, if you're not feeling healthy, if you feel you may have a health issue that might be related to the coronavirus, the state health department has a toll-free number that I'm trying to look for right now that they ask you to call. They may not want you to go to the hospital if they screen you and it seems like you might have the virus. It might be the last place in the world they want you to go is the hospital.
Really?
And they'll send someone to your home, or they'll have you, they'll help you get transportation to a clinic, or that kind of thing. But they're really they're really trying to control the situation by having people who feel they're ill to call that toll-free number, which of course I can't find right now.
Well, no. Well, while you're looking for it, I'm looking on the City of Albuquerque website, and of course they don't have the number either. But I'll read what they have there. City is closely monitoring COVID-19. At this time, all city events, offices, programs, and services are operating as normal. You can prevent the spread of respiratory illness in our community by washing your hands often, covering your cough or sneeze, staying home when you are sick, and cleaning frequently touched objects and surfaces. These actions will also prevent the common cold and flu. The New Mexico Department of Health is lead agency for the statewide coronavirus response. Community members are encouraged to visit https cv.nmhealth.org and follow the New Mexico Department of Health on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for the latest information. As more information about COVID-19 becomes available, the City of Albuquerque will provide updates to staff and communities. Okay, did you find that yet? And when you find that, can you put that in the header of this podcast so people remember that number?
I will.
And get it ingrained on their psyche.
I also saw the health department has now issued a statement where they're not allowing any mass gatherings. So maybe the point about sporting events and religious things and such is a moot point, because the health department, we all really need to follow the health department's instructions on this.
Abreast of this, keep this changes minute to minute and day to day. So when you listen to this podcast 3 days ago, there may be more cases, there may be more instructions. So keep alert and keep active against this uninvited activist.
We're lucky to have the communications technology that we do have right now, because everybody can tell a friend and check in on friends and make sure they're not sick with the virus. And I personally, I know how serious this is, because in December of 2019 and January of 2018, I had a series of flus. And the second one was pretty serious. It's one of the few times in my life where I thought, maybe I should call an ambulance. I was coughing and so short of breath, but I had no fever. So I don't know what virus it was, but I had the flu, which all the healthcare people I talked to seemed to think it was the flu. So, but it was horrible. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like with something that's as virulent as this COVID. I mean, it's a little bit more brutal than the flu, is what they're saying. Some of the people that are suffering from it are saying some things that indicate that that's true. You know, that it's unlike any illness they ever had.
Yeah. Well, I hope that person in the White House isn't coming down with us, because his breathing sure sounded funny during the speech last night. And apparently he's been doing all sorts of idiotic contacts with people. Some representative from Brazil that tested positive, he was in contact with. There's reports of people around Mar-a-Lago have come down with that. At one point, he was reported to be shaking hands with everybody and touching microphones right and left, and dropping rumors that, as long as you take care of yourself and stay away, you can even come to my rallies. It's like, whoa. As you know, politically,
yeah, I heard that he was saying that the rallies were okay. That they wanted him to go there. Even Mark Zuckerberg did a live thing this morning talking about the pandemic. He and a couple of healthcare experts were live on Facebook this morning talking about it. And they were saying the same thing. It's to flatten the curve, we have to lower the incidence of contact. So, just go into public as little as you need to. Try to plan for an environment for where the next few weeks you can actually just kind of stop all social contact. That doesn't appear to be happening here. I mean, when I got up this morning, it's the same thing. The cars are flying down the freeway in huge numbers. So nobody stayed home today. Schools were closed. Albuquerque schools were closed today because it's parent-teacher conferences. So that cut down the amount of.
Well, my daughter goes to charter school. She's actually in school today, not tomorrow, for parent-teacher conferences, because they just have one day or something like that. But the principal's been all over with saying that they've cleaned the classroom or whatever, sterilized classrooms, and given everybody every level of governmental warning. So hopefully she's okay. She's okay today.
You just need to wash your hands a lot, even in an environment like that, because there's a lot of residue from the cleaning supplies that probably aren't that good for you.
Right, that's what she's been saying the entire time is wash your hands, Dad, wash your hands. Yeah, and I'm going to go shopping this afternoon. I usually go to like a coffee shop or a breakfast place in the morning. I didn't do that. Today I'm going to stay away for a very long time until this lifts. It's nothing that I'm freaking out about. It's something that we have to be very smart and very patient about. It was interesting that you mentioned Facebook and Mr. Zuckerberg because I have some interesting information. My little sister lives in Dobbs Ferry, New York, which is where Mark Zuckerberg is from. In fact, she was, if she had not moved from the middle school in Ardsley to, what am I hearing in the background?
Oh, that was Mark.
You're picking up something. I'll start this again. My little sister lives in Dobbs Ferry, New York, which was the home of Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, by the way. And if she stayed as a middle school teacher at Ardsley Middle School for 2 years, she actually would have been his instructor way back when. So I called her up and said, "How are things going there?" People are kind of worried, and my niece lives in New York City, and they said, we're taking all the precautions, we're staying home, and there's a lot of people here, but we have to be ultra careful and stuff like that. And then I said, well, it's interesting to catch you in Dobbs Ferry because you're usually up in at your house in the Adirondacks, and then I asked her. Speaking of that, where exactly is New Rochelle, New York? And she goes, well, it's actually kind of due east from us. It's past the rivers and the Parkway on Long Island Sound, so it's kind of on the water, and it's a pretty big city in its own right. And apparently, if you've been seeing the news, you know that Governor Cuomo of New York is cordoned off, has basically quarantined the entire city of New Rochelle with the National Guard, and I guess I don't know what the status is of the testing right now, but I know that they're there to keep people out, keep people in, and to deliver food to these people there. And the other, just to end this, interesting thing about this was when we were talking about the Adirondacks. My brother-in-law actually went up there last week and sort of got treated like The Walking Dead by the residents up there. You know, they love them and stuff like that, but they're all like standing back with their hands back, like, you know, stay away from us. We're not necessarily, you know, infected, or this hasn't really spread here yet. But still, these crazy things like, you know, buying out Costco of all its toilet paper and all this stuff. I mean, people can go to streams, people can freak out. They want us to freak out. You know, this is part of the whole overall fear mechanism. But be sensible, be smart, take precautions.
Exactly. It's a time to play it safe, and that's really the smart thing to do at this point.
Well, you know,
I did find that Department of Health 24/7 hotline number.
Great.
And the New Mexico Department of Health has created a hotline for coronavirus calls. They ask that people who feel they may be infected to call this number before seeking any other health care options. Unless it's an emergency, then of course you would dial 911. And the calls are taken 24 hours a day, and that number is 1-855-600-3453. Again, 1-855-600-3453.
Wow. Well, have we covered every base on this? I know, what did I hear? Well, you know, apparently, from what I was reading, you know, is that, you know, this could have started anywhere, but these people in China were fast enough and smart enough to detect it and figure out what it was and take immediate actions. As far as I can tell, I didn't understand why the person in the White House was like limiting flights or canceling flights from Europe and stuff like that, except for Great Britain. You know, people can take the train and drive under the channel and fly to America, and it's already here, people. I'm sorry. You know, the people, like I was going to finish about the Prime Minister of Italy and the health minister there, they're saying, you know, like, yeah, Italy kind of missed the window double time, and we've missed the window like quadruple time. So we have to be terribly careful. I guess there's cases. Is it all around the world? Is there any place that has been spared at this point?
No, it's. I believe it's on all continents.
Yeah. And then, you know, just speaking a little bit more politically, I guess, you know, and I can't confirm this. We're like I said, we're doing this on the wing. If you could call in and correct us, that'd be great. Hopefully, we'll have a show like that in the future.
Mayor Tim Keller and city leaders from Bernalillo County, UNM Health Sciences Center addressed residents on today regarding the recent arrival of coronavirus in the New Mexico community. Well, I don't know how recent it is. We're now identifying cases. They say the city is prepared for weeks for this, and Mayor Keller stressed the importance of social distancing and noted a 25% reduction in mixing with other individuals can create as much as a 50% reduction in infections. So he's saying the same thing that most people are, you know, just stay away from each other, especially stay away from the elderly because they're most at risk.
advice. I'm going to read a thing my friend, my Facebook friend, Yummy Simmons, posted yesterday from a person named Joan Robes. I think it's Robes. I don't think it's Robles. It says, a voice of reason and experience surfaces with a clear message for everyone. This is a message from the hospital outside Toronto, a very good voice of reason and sanity. Thank you, Dr. Abu Sharkway and Deb, for sharing. I'm a doctor and an infectious disease specialist. I've been at this for more than 20 years, seeing sick patients on a daily basis. I've worked in inner-city hospitals and in the poorest slums of Africa. HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, TB, SARS, measles, shingles, whooping cough, diphtheria. There is little I haven't been exposed to in my profession. And with a notable exception of SARS, very little has left me feeling vulnerable, overwhelmed, and downright scared. I am not scared of COVID-19. I am concerned about the implications of a novel infectious agent that has spread the world over and continues to find new footholds in different soil. I am rightly concerned for the welfare of those who are elderly, in frail health, or disenfranchised, who stand to suffer mostly, and proportionately at the hands of this new scourge. But I'm not scared of COVID-19. What I am scared about is the loss of reason and the wave of fear that has induced the masses of society into a spellbinding spiral of panic, stockpiling obscene quantities of anything that could fill a bomb shelter adequately in a post-apocalyptic world. I am scared of the N95 masks that are stolen from hospitals and urgent care clinics where they're actually needed for frontline healthcare providers and instead are being donned in airports, malls, and coffee lounges, perpetuating even more fear and suspicion of others. I am scared that our hospitals will be overwhelmed with anyone who thinks that they, quote, probably don't have it, but they might as well get checked out no matter what because you never know. And those with heart failure, emphysema, pneumonia, and strokes will pay the price of overfilled emergency ER waiting rooms. And with only so many doctors and nurses to assess, I am scared that travel restrictions will become so far-reaching that weddings will be canceled, graduations missed, and family reunions will not materialize. And while even that big party called the Olympic Games, that could be kibosh too. Can you even imagine? I'm scared that those same epidemic fears will limit trade, harm partnerships in multiple sectors, business and otherwise, and ultimately culminate in a global recession. But mostly I'm scared about what message we're telling to our kids when faced with a threat. Instead of reason, rationality, open-mindedness, and altruism, we're telling them to panic, be fearful, suspicious, reactionary, and self-interested. COVID-19 is nowhere near over. It'll be coming to a city, a hospital, a friend, and even a family member near you at some point. Expect it. Stop waiting to be surprised further. The fact is the virus itself will not likely do much harm when it arrives, but our own behaviors and the, quote, fight for yourself above all else, unquote, attitude could prove disastrous. I implore you all, temper fear with reason, panic with patience, and uncertainty with education. We have an opportunity to learn a great deal about health hygiene and limiting the spread of innumerable transmissible diseases in our society. Let's meet this challenge together in the best spirit of compassion for others, patience, and above all, an unfailing effort to seek truth, facts, and knowledge as opposed to conjecture, speculation, and catastrophizing. Facts, not fear. Clean hands, open heart. Our children will thank us for it.
Those are
Mic drop.
Those are some good points. Again, for the next few weeks or so, the social distancing thing is huge. The less contact people have with each other, the better. And I think that message is getting disseminated out to people, and I think organizations and schools, many schools have already closed around the country. A lot of the institutes of higher education, they were just like, we'll do this online for right now.
And, yeah, well, there is two local schools have done something. I think St. John's has sent all its students home in Santa Fe, which kind of bugs me because aren't most of their students from out of state? I don't know. And Academy in Albuquerque, fancy kind of prep school here, I guess somebody from out of state had tested for it or something like that. So they canceled everything through prom and stuff like that and shut their school down.
Well, that's probably not such a bad idea.
Well, I don't know if we're done on this topic, but let me switch to another topic that might interest our listeners and people that have been working with us on police reform. Our second activist police reform workshop was quite a success. It wasn't as heavily attended as the last, but we have a lot more people on our email list, and we had some very interesting conversation and guests. Are you still there, Lloyd?
I am.
Okay, I heard something go beep. Sorry, there's two things beep again. I hope my phone isn't dying. But anyway, to back up, at our last activist community podcast, sorry, I'm getting all flustered. What is this beep? Oh, I've got a call coming in from the hospital. Hold on.
You're back.
All right. Do you have to call me back to get me back on the podcast?
No, you're being recorded right now.
In other news, this is in regards to our third activist police reform workshop. We're tentatively scheduling it for the 4th of April between 1 and 3 o'clock. We're shortening this. There's a possibility that Professor Alfred Matheson, the dean of the UNM Law School, or he was co-dean at one point, he may not be, but the former dean at least, is maybe one of our guests. We may have the former dean of the Women's Law School, State Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, back again with us. She's very interested in what we're doing in addition to sponsoring Senate Bill 100, and that we all have to get behind. Our last workshop was very productive and informative. Antoinette spoke about Senate Bill 100, Senate Bill 147, which is very important. Early childhood education, the failed marijuana legislation, a number of very interesting issues. We talked about Bernalillo County mental health, 16 different programs there. The company in Arizona that actually does the lion's share of the mental and behavioral health that Bernalillo County has set up and is sponsoring. And it proved, we'll have a lot more material. Andreas and I are going to federal court on Wednesday. If it's still there, if it's not canceled due to the coronavirus, to prevent our amicus filing in regards to refashioning the consent decree between the Department of Justice and the City of Albuquerque that APD is responsible for. And so once again, our workshop number 3 is going to be on Saturday, April the 4th between 1 and 3. Do you have anything to add? Any other announcements, Lloyd?
Well, we'll be doing that at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice on Harvard Southeast. Right.
Oh, yeah, I forgot the address. It's always at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, 202 Harvard Southeast. And hopefully, well, I don't know. We may have to reschedule. We'll see how it goes. But everybody stay safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Again, Activist Community Podcast on the Activist Community Podcast Network. Thanks, Tom.